So the first story I'm going to be talking about is when he basically discovered that if he drew on one sheet of paper and then laid another one on top, he could create prints basically, and how this was just the basis of his work, where he can create many images from one drawing. And at the time he created something that was really new because people didn't really do that in the past, and I just thought this was really interesting because especially now even I feel like printmaking doesn't get enough focus as other forms of art, and like I myself would want to try that one day and just experiment with printmaking a little bit more. So I thought it was pretty interesting because I didn't even know that that's what Warhol did in the past. And then we have our second story, which I guess is kind of a little funny. But around the 38-minute mark, he was talking about how his editor, when he first got published, accidentally misspelled his name, where she omitted the final A in his name, and instead of correcting her, he just left it as is because he was so awkward. And I thought this one was really interesting because I never knew he had an extra A in his name, actually, and I always knew him as Warhol. So it's just crazy to me how he just adapted a new name all by himself, and a lot of people wouldn't have known that. So that was pretty interesting to learn about. And then just like the last little thing that I found was interesting, the last little story, was how just his process, how it was the messy version versus the type version, which is like a lot of artists have that, and how he created his art that looks a little bit more commercial, like his commercial art where it's just flat, and how this was really risky and in your face at the time because some people thought that it was anti-art, which is crazy to me, but he just really needed to make an impact to make a name for himself, and he needed to do something personal, which is like where the soup cans derived from. And I thought that was really interesting because I didn't know any of this prior to this film. And so I like Warhol more than I did now because of everything that I learned from this film, because his background was so interesting, who he was as a person was so interesting, and just knowing all of that makes him a lot more interesting, and it makes me appreciate him as an artist more, but also his work, because I feel like nowadays we might take pop art for granted, just think, oh, it's nothing new and nothing interesting. But at the time that Warhol was creating like the soup cans, for example, that was all new, and I think that was kind of genius of him. But also, like, because I mentioned that it was all new at the time, it was all different, he is what I consider an avant-garde artist because, again, at the time he was doing something that people haven't been doing, and that's new and that's different. In general, I think that his older pieces, personally, that are a little bit more strange, and I feel like even more so now, I feel like it's a little strange because I don't really see that type of line being used a lot. Personally, I don't see that type of line being used a lot, and they're just, the way the bodies are shaped and the way the line is used is a little bit different, and especially in this piece. But yeah, they all just basically gave off this pretty unique feeling, and then they were all pretty unique, and I think they still are pretty unique, and I think his work in general was pretty unique. So